Michael Mulvihill, thank you so much for joining me today. As I say to all my guests, to the Professional Hypnotherapist podcast. And I'm spitting all over the place here. Now, Michael, you have recently published a book, and this is it, Hypnosaga, and Unraveling the Threads of Hypnotic History. And I have to say, it's a great read. It's definitely something very novel. It's quite um, extensive. You delve right back into the past, into from animal magnetism, right up to the modern day, and the um, the contribution that hypnosis and hypnotherapy makes to modern day science or modern day medicine and psychological change, whatever. Um, but let's get talk about Michael Mulvihill briefly, if you don't mind. What was your motivation in writing this book or researching this book?
It was twofold. I've been diagnosed with um, like basically requiring double hip replacement. I have osteoarthritis, so I
Okay.
needed to empower myself with ways to fight that. And of course, um, I used my knowledge of hypnosis and my knowledge of Kempo karate to keep myself sane for the past 5 years.
You mentioned something there. What was it? Was that the karate, was it, or the
Yeah, I have a black belt in Kempo, and initially, the first person I was with, the first orthopedist, believed that it was caused by martial arts and wanted me to quit. So obviously, I told him I'm never going to quit, and I went with somebody else.
right, right. So that was your motivation for writing the book.
And
And
also, there's another motivation.
yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
I also felt that people like to gaslight hypnosis and hypnotherapy. What we do is a beautiful thing, and I want to empower my fellow hypnotherapists to know deeply what it is that we do, so that they will not be gaslit or they won't be thought stopped by media or by people who want to kind of straitjacket hypnotherapy into a stereotype of us being diminutive in stature or lesser than. So that was another reason.
Oh, excellent. And
Yeah.
obviously you feel very strong about this, Michael. It's
Well,
something that obviously, gets to your core. What, maybe can you develop that? What was at the heart of the motivation there, if I'm not repeating myself?
pain, and I think people need to know if you have double hip osteoarthritis, you can get very depressed, you can gain a lot of weight, and you can become immobile, and it can become so much more progressive. Whereas I realized because I knew martial arts and hypnosis, which actually is an alloy, they're not separate. I knew that if I use these two with good diet and with good loving family I come from, that I can actually be healthy for my operation. And they were shocked at how healthy I was. But don't forget, you're talking to a person that wouldn't particularly care to walk up the road, but yet I was able to do exercise. And when I say that I was able to conjoin martial arts, I feel when I'm doing a kata or when I'm doing karate, I'm actually doing wide open hypnosis.
Okay. So it's well, it's conscious hypnosis, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But that's as valid. Like I've learned from studying hypnosis, if your eyes are open, you can still do hypnosis, which is something.
Uh-huh.
Although when I really want to relax, I close my eyes and I do
Right,
hypnosis that way
right.
also.
Uh-huh. And when did you get the time to do this? Or when did you research the book? Or indeed, how long have you been researching it?
Well, it's not an easy book to write. It would have taken about two or 3 years.
Wow.
Lunch breaks, maybe when my children are asleep, and every spare moment I would get, I'd be on my phone and I'd be getting on my Kindle or on articles, and I'm saying to you, like every chapter would have been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Huh. Yeah. Now, it involves you going right back in history. And it, can you tell us what was the start of your research, or where did you end up? If I'm not if I'm making sense. So you have to
You
start,
are, yeah.
but at the same time, you actually find yourself somewhere.
You see, we could get terribly convoluted about this because neither I or your good self or have proprietorship over hypnosis. So where does it begin? Does it begin at
Yeah.
that time in evolutionary development where we enter consciousness, and therefore we can go back to our unconscious mind? So that was one complexity. But I realized that hypnosis is as old as we are human, and that's in itself is enough to grapple with. You know,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
need in psychoanalytical parlance. I don't mean to sound pretentious, right? You need to have a super ego. You need to have a super I, a sort of a conscious mind in order to be able to retrieve back to your pre-conscious and your unconscious. You get me?
Yes. Yes. So it's it, it's basically from the moment of our birth or conception or birth,
Maybe a
when we
bit
come into
after
the
that,
world. Pardon?
because maybe a bit after that, because you see, you won't go into hypnosis unless you have the extra I think you have to have awareness to
Yeah.
go back into the unknown. Does that sound right?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It's like a chicken and egg, you have to be conscious, to enter into any type of a contract or into any type of interaction with another person, in terms even in speech or whatever. So I get what you're coming at here, what you're getting at. So you went right back, and obviously you probably went back to ancient Egypt. Tell us about that.
Well, first of all, I went to the prehistorical societies. And because I have a child with special needs, so it's close to my heart. And I found that even in those societies, they had caring attitudes towards, I call them our children. So, um, and I suppose the point where I feel that hypnosis starts to kind of play a role in society is indeed around ancient Egypt, Imhotep. I found
Yeah.
that very extraordinary to study it because it was a genuine immersive um, experience that they put the seeker, they call it the seeker, into. But what I also found almost salvific about was there was almost a sense of melancholia in studying it as well, even though it was
Right.
salvific, because I realized that the ancient Egyptians suffered from terrible nostalgia. They believed that perfection was not in this life, but it was in the start of the human race in the Garden of Eden, and that's what they wanted to return to. So they were perpetually suffering from nostalgia. They weren't just going into those moments at night time when we listen to 80s music and go, God, where did we all go wrong?
Absolutely. That's interesting. They suffered from nostalgia,
Mm.
and having that that capacity or that longing. Um, where does hypnosis or where does the trance come into that?
It comes into it because basically um, it humbles the likes of me who love psychoanalysis, that dream interpretation doesn't come from Freud. It actually comes from the ancient Egyptians. So you would go into the temple, and you would be well educated by your temple priest, and then you'd listen to all this gorgeous music, and you go deep within the womb of the temple into this immersive experience, which means you're going directly within the hidden depths of the human mind, and you're basically, the way the way hypnotherapy is very directive as opposed to non-directive. I can clarify that if you want, but you're having a directed dream, perhaps just an element of lucidity in it, where you're having either a dream with a deity Imhotep, or you're having a healing dream, or you're having an existentialist dream where you will have something about your existence, something about your deeper self, your core will be will be transmitted in your dream, and then you will take those contents, whatever it is that you remember, back to your healing priest, and they will help interpret what that dream means. So that's an awesome power that they were dealing with.
Mhm. Okay, and it's definitely is. And comparing that, and maybe I'm going all over the place here, but no
Oh, please,
matter,
please
we
keep
can.
continue. Yeah, and I also, by all means, reflecting on what we're saying, because it's a lot to package, a lot to take in.
Yeah, yeah. I'm saying that, that's many thousands of years ago, and of course, a lot of it has application today. However, let's make a quantum leap up to today in terms of dreams and our understanding of dreams. There's a total contrast there, isn't there, in terms of what we know dreams are now compared to what they were way back then.
Well, I, well, I would respectfully say that the power of dream is something that we might underestimate. I don't think you would. So basically, there's at least two or three things going on there where you can have it within hypnotherapy. We have healing dreams. So a lot of the time, clients don't want to come to likes of your good self with dreams, or they don't remember them. But you can ask them to have a healing dream within their hypnotherapy practice. But also, don't forget, a lot of the people who are coming to you, if they have trauma, they suffer from nightmares. And I think within that system, you can also teach them how to control their dreams through lucid dreaming. I think that lucid dreaming might have been part of that ancient system. But it's again, that's a chapter that I didn't write. Not all things fell into my book. I think that
No, but
dreams are vital though for a solid analysis of yourself.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's essential that we indeed write down our dreams, and but you touched on it earlier about dream interpretation. Maybe speak to that for a moment, please, if you don't
So,
mind.
so basically, Sigmund Freud wrote a huge book, is this thick, in 1901 called The Interpretation of Dreams. And I think Wilhelm Steckel also wrote an interpretation of dreams, if not Sandor Ferenczi. But his method of treating dreams, you'd have the manifest content, what the client would learn, and you would bring that to your psychoanalytical practice. I put you on the couch and you'd say it to your patient, or your patient would say it to your analyst, and then your analyst would pick out the latent content, and somehow the interpretation of the dream would occur because between you, the client, or what we call the analyst, and the psychoanalyst, there will be an accord, an agreement that what was basically the interpretation was correct. But for the likes of myself, I wouldn't find it by all means that easy to interpret a dream that way. But there are excellent ways within the psychoanalysis, the hypnopsychoanalysis that our own good Joe Keely taught, that can actually help us to interpret dreams in a ways that are less difficult for the therapist and for the patient.
Now, you mentioned there hypnoanalysis, and what's your take on hypnoanalysis? I mean, how essential is it, or indeed, is it a methodology that is important nowadays? Has it a role nowadays?
Well, I would feel it should have a role, a sacred role in hypnotherapy, because without hypnoanalysis, it would never have been hypnotherapy. Um, Basically, did you ever think yourself, what is the difference between a hypnotherapy book and a psychoanalytic book and a psychotherapy book? Well,
Okay.
I'll tell you the difference right now. It's
Right.
manualization. You have manuals in hypnotherapy books, the instructions, but in a psychoanalytical book, you don't have instructions. And that's why it's very hard for you or I to follow the methods that Sigmund Freud used. Do you understand me? That's one key aspect. But the other key aspect is that where did that manualization come from? Well, that manualization of hypnotherapy books came from the First World War. It came from a necessity to fracturate psychoanalysis and to be able to treat patients that had trauma. So, and the results were fantastic. I wanted to add, you had people who were able to return to the bosom of their family, healthy again. But that's the first time that hypnotherapists ever were able to kind of change from being kind of people that just offered suggestion therapy, which kind of sounds diminutive, but suggestion therapy is not as it's not as is not lesser than, by all means. It's just that, again, people don't know the history of suggestion therapy. But if we just keep with hypnoanalysis, I
Yeah.
would say that it is a vital instrument of hypnotherapy, and I can
Hmm.
go further and further and further on that.
Yeah, no, no, that's all very good. Thank you so much for that. Just a few notes I have here. I mean, in terms of the book, the Hypnosaga book that you published, Unraveling the Threads of Hypnotic History. The topics that come to my mind is the evolution of hypnotherapy, which is really important. And number two, contributions of pioneers, the main protagonists there, like Mesmer, Lindner, and shaping the field of hypnotherapy, like hypnoanalysis that we just mentioned in historical context, like examining the use of hypnoanalysis during significant events, such as its application during the First World War.
Mm.
And indeed, number four, dispelling the myths about hypnosis. All of this is covered in your book, Hypnotherapy's Role in Treating Various Conditions. Well, something that since we were talking there about psychodynamic work, hypnoanalysis in historical context, um, tell us about its application in the First World War, if you may, please.
Yeah, well, I have two huge books at home by psychiatrists that I haven't read, which spell out the methods that they use. But I want to be clear about something, is that we might perceive that that hypnopsychotherapy was given en masse to every rank of soldier. That wasn't the case. So if you read a book called Hysteria by Andrew Scull, you'll soon realize the truth. The truth is that we had a bunch of soldiers that were suffering from what's called shell shock, okay? And they were seen and they were perceived, I would say they were misperceived as malingerers. And initially they wanted to just put them against the wall and shoot them. They didn't know what to do
Yeah,
with them. But the psychiatrists would have used extreme methods such as Faradayization, electric shock. Even they used even coma therapy or sleep therapy, which is profoundly bad therapy, can kill you. But so it was the officers who were getting the hypnoanalysis. It was them. It was the elite core, and you can kind of see that in the likes of Siegfried Sassoon. But what those men would do is, you would have people with very devastating symptoms, such as paralysis of the, where it would be kind of paralysis, but it would be not genuine paralysis, it would be psychological paralysis, whereas they could walk, but they could not like walk because it was within their mind, and it was at the aspect of their mind. But the etiology, or the central core of of that trauma, was an initial sensitizing event. And that's what the hypno therapist would have to work on, is
yeah.
finding the root cause. And it could take several immersions to find the root cause. It's sort of a lie to say you can treat this within a few sessions. The reality is that a solid hypnoanalysis would take 6 months, an hour and a half a day, and then the person will be
Oh,
good.
wow, that's a lot. And
It is a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. The we just highlighted some notes I have here. I mean, hypnotherapy's role in treating various conditions. Um, And what do we see now? I have another questions here. Uh, how did, yeah, I know we spoke about it earlier briefly, but what was your method of research in terms of if I may, maybe if we've covered this, we can move on. But something that occurs to me in terms of when you're writing a book such as this, you know, for anyone out there who's interested in writing a book, maybe on some other topic even, where do you start?
Um, well, for me, I was able to have a good timeline, don't forget, because when I was a kid, I'd done my first college essay on the history of madness, which is basically, it's called madness because before psychiatry was invented, it was just simply, it was called madness. So I had a timeline of the discovery of the unconscious mind, and that's what I went on, was a timeline from that course, where you would start on prehistory, and I knew to conjoin it with the history of the medical history. But then I found a lot of original texts. So I found um, Braid's Neuropenology, his book. I found a book by De Lawrence, which again was a 19th century book on hypnotherapy. So I said to myself, well, if people don't think I haven't found gold, I have hit gold, because I found a lot of texts that were like original old texts. I even got a bit on De Faria and Henan de Cuvelier. So I found a lot of the original writers that I was able to kind of um, harvest. But in terms of
Excellent.
the
So,
timeline, I had a timeline, and I
yeah,
had a good idea of what I wanted to portray, and I still want to portray more, but that's why there'll be further volumes,
mm.
you know?
You mentioned it took about 2 or 3 years or whatever.
Yeah.
You're a bit of a heavyweight, Michael, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, you see, I could say that I find reading is one of my addictions, and then
Right.
karate, and then obviously caring for my family and maybe a bit
Oh,
of faith, but that's my life.
yeah.
And yeah, I do love reading it. It keeps me sane, you know?
Right. Because there seems to be no stone unturned for you to
Yeah,
produce a work such as you have in Hypnosaga.
yeah,
Um, no, thank you for that. No, there have been many, protagonists, if you want to call them, in the world of hypnosis, like Mesmer and James Braid. Maybe you just mention a couple of them or a few of them you know, that you believe are significant or are of importance.
Mesmer was amazing. I mean, I think people would have a diminutive opinion of him because they would say, "Oh well, if his opinion was that the therapist has the power," but he was only going on what he knew at the time. But for me, Mesmer was engaging in something that we fully don't understand, and that is the non-verbal element of um, of therapy. And a lot of patients, they can't verbalize what hell they experienced, but they can visualize. And what was so beautiful about Anton Mesmer's therapy, and I think this is something that you or anyone who's a therapist can actually hone in on, was first of all the use of silence, which was a profound deepener for him, but also before he had his patients, he would he would basically meditate on the healing and the curing of his patient. He would he would basically visualize them being healed and visualize them being restored, which is a beautiful practice, you know. So that was one amazing thing he did, and yes, it was seen, and perhaps it was misperceived as being all about to do with the imagination, something that Anton Mesmer would have growled at the authorities for saying that about his therapy. But I think that his therapy, basically it allowed the patient to enter deep within the hidden subconscious, the deepest subconscious mind. And we generally had abreactions through this mysterious therapy. It was called a therapeutic crisis. And in modern hypnotherapy, we're a bit precious about hypnotherapy, about abreactions. We like to intervene and go to a safe place, breathe it out. But in the mesmeric code, if you're having a therapeutic crisis, the patient is just allowed to stay with it, and the therapist does not intervene.
Yeah, excellent. What something that occurs to me, Michael, is that, it is the client's trance. It is their experience. It's not necessary, well, it's not the therapist's trance, and the whole area of nonverbal is so important that it's not all about, talking, the therapist talking. It's it's allowing the client to, I suppose, and correct me if what I'm saying, contradicts what you believe. It's about allowing the client to experience their own trance, their own internal world, and somehow through the process or the help of the therapist, there is some sort of a resolution. Would you speak to that for us, please?
I feel kind of melancholic as well, because I agree so fundamentally with what you're saying. There are combat soldiers who would go to hypnotherapists, and some hypnotherapists would bring them into a very deep hypnosis, and they would allow them to sit into hypnosis, and they would basically picture their trauma, and they'd be released that way as opposed to verbalizing it. The nonverbal is so profound and so mysterious. And I wrote that chapter on mesmerism with profound love because I have a child that cannot speak. So that's why, and I feel like I haven't fully understood the nonverbal, but I certainly am dedicated to understanding that, because I'm dedicated to understanding my son. But I would say the difference between my son's nonverbal experience and the nonverbal experience that we're talking about is that he seems to be trapped in his world, and we're trying to decode it. But I still think we are trying to decode our nonverbal elements within ourselves, which is the deepest part of the unconscious mind, the symbolic part.
Mm.
And that's
Yeah.
possibly what people are trying to do. They're trying to access the deepest parts within themselves, because our modern world is so busy, and people are so distracted that they forget they even have an inner world.
Mhm. Yeah, excellent. I like that. Yeah, and the scientific understanding of hypnosis over the years has changed, or has evolved, as it were. Um, uh, does modern science and psychology, in any way validate the work of hypnosis and hypnotherapy, in your opinion?
Um, I guess it's the most overly researched um, sort of like complementary therapy of all the complementary therapies. I would say that hypnotherapy is a radical, it's a subversive, it's profoundly promiscuous in a sense that you can find it in many fields, right? But what I would say to it is that it is something that science cannot, with its empirical outlook, it cannot measure, it cannot quantify, and therefore it cannot possess. And that is the problem with hypnotherapy for them, because they want the whole idea of therapeutics now is outcome focused, solution focused, and that's been the case especially since the 1950s, because before that, uh, the world was very open to psychoanalysis and hypnotherapy, but in the 1950s they realized, hold on, we can actually control minds without having to use the standard forebearers of psychiatry, which are straitjacketing, lobotomy, ECT, solitary confinement. We can control minds through psychopharmacological compounds, and therefore the whole therapeutic outlay had to be all about short-term yellow pack therapy, and not long-term therapy, and not really, and it had to be about empiricism, and it had to be about what's measurable. Now, CBT is measurable. Behavioral therapy is the most measurable, most scientific of all the psychologies. But hypnosis and psychoanalysis is more of a sort of an art, and that's hard to quantify, it's hard to define, and it's hard to experiment upon. However, I warn you that there are elements that of hypnosis, certainly, that powers that be certainly do want to know, and sometimes they want to misuse it. And it's probably the most heartbreaking element of what we do, hypnotherapy and hypnosis and NLP and all that, is that it can be extracted and it can be used by by bad actors. And I think that's something that the average hypnotherapist knows nothing about, you know?
Yeah. I like what you say there. I think that's a really important point that you've made. In terms of, would you say that that hypnosis is just a form of a placebo? What's your response to that?
I think it's a dangerous idea to put across. I'm not saying you put it across.
No, no,
I'd
just a
say that
question.
you got a lot of alternative therapists who love to call everything a placebo.
Yeah,
Um, and then they love to talk in dichotomies of, oh, I'm not doing the curing, the client is doing the curing, and they're not that kind of, I would call it a fragmented thought, doesn't explain the whole amazing process of what we are doing. Um, and I wish to talk about the therapeutic lines, the transference, and the awesome power of the subconscious mind, which is something that the Western mind does not fully understand. Um, so yeah, I feel that we're doing well beyond what we understand when we're doing hypnotherapy. And I
and the
think it's not, I
therapeutic.
don't think it's a placebo. I think it's activating the inner curing elements of our mind and the problem solving elements within our mind. It's a lot to take in, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And just slightly to go back, because you mentioned there, hypnotherapy is, you can't quantify it, you can't put it in a box, you can't sort of almost, you can't label it, as it were, although we do label hypnosis, but exactly what is it? It's you you can't touch it,
Well,
and
hypnosis or hypnotherapy, I can answer to both.
yeah, well, give us your take on that, please.
So for me, hypnosis is an analgesic. It's a powerful analgesic. Trust me. I've been doing it because I've had my left hip cut out of me. So it's a powerful anesthesia. It's a powerful relaxer. It's a powerful anxiolytic, and it's a powerful antidepressant. So it is a gift from Mother Nature, which has gone all the way back from our earliest healers, the medicine man. So it is a gift. Now, hypnotherapeutics, that's what we're doing even right now. We're conversing. It's dialogical. You understand me? Before it was monologuing. So you go to like your QA, and you would tell him your whole problem, and he would give it back to you through in a hyper intelligent script. He would tell you the way to the promised land. But then you have your Breuer. But if you want to know the true author of all therapy, was a woman named Anna O. Bertha Poppenheim, because she taught Joseph Breuer how to treat her. It was called the talking cure, and then of course Freud took over from that. So it is a dialogical
Yeah.
uh, uh,
Like,
entity, is what you're talking when you're talking about therapeutics.
hmm, lovely. I love the I love the, the Anna O, where she, she taught, as you mentioned, Breyer, uh, how to treat her. And, in many regards, and again, maybe this I'm jumping out into space here,
I
in
want
many
you to,
regards,
yeah, go with me. I'm also there.
in many regards, I mean, that's the case with every client, isn't it, really?
You see, you're dealing with mysterious forces that your average therapist might know anything about. I'm not talking to hypnotherapist. Your average cognitive behavioral therapist doesn't know truly what they're dealing with. You're dealing with something so awesome as the unconscious mind, and often you will hear therapists going, "Oh, they did not come with what they presented. It was, I found out it was something else." Well, take your time, because that something else will be something else and something else. Well, you're there as a witness to their suffering, and you are, as Freud said, you're taking out the wounds. But it's that element which he called God, that unknown element that is healing the wound, that is
Hmm.
fasting. All we're doing is fasting the stitches.
Yeah.
But you're still a
Fascinating.
vital part in that, by the way.
Beg your pardon?
You're still a vital part in that. It's not a case of I'm not
Yeah.
doing the curing, therefore
Yeah.
I'm just sitting back on having a beer. But the therapist is very, very important. They are controlling their counter transference, and they are dealing with the transference of the patient, which is not an easy thing to do, my friend.
No, indeed.
Mm,
Um, do you believe, in your opinion, Michael,
go ahead.
uh, that hypnosis is underutilized in modern day medicine? And if you do, um,
Of course it is underutilized. Yeah.
yeah, what needs to change in order for it to be more utilized, more used?
Well, what would need to be changed is a change of mind. Hypnotherapists need to start empowering themselves, and they need to start reading books like I read, or even my book to start with, because then they might go, "Oh heck, what I'm actually doing is awesome. It's not
Yeah,
just mechanical. It's not just, oh, I'm curing this and that, and I'm just not just a niche." But
yeah,
doctors need to start talking to us, and they need to start realizing that we have a mandate. We actually have a mandate, because psychopharmacology and pharmacological compounds are overly prescribed in this country, and the patient is dying to talk to us. We also need to stop straight-jacketing ourselves and being dogmatic about who we can treat and who we cannot treat. Read more books. Stop telling me that this condition, that condition is contraindicated and we can't go near it. No, it's not contraindicated. Your lack of reading is contraindicated to the truth of what it is that you are doing as a therapist. Because if Lindner treated psychopaths and psychotics, and if Braid treated epilepsy, well, surely you can at least say you can treat trauma. There's some hypnotherapists who think they can't even go near trauma. They need to have an additional course at extra cost. There's some hypnotherapists who feel they can't treat alcoholics or drug addicts. You certainly can. And if you tell me you can't treat psychosis, you can. Now, this takes responsible, ethical therapy by all means, but there is, to let's just be clear, to mental illness, there is two compounds. There's two features. There's the endogenous biological element of it. That needs to be treated with drugs by all means. There is the exogenous, there is the reactive element. And that is what people are dying to talk to you about. And it is important that we open the doors to these people. They're some other's son and they're some other's daughter, and they're dying to talk to, but they're being caged in. The system is not reaching out to them. The doctors are not reaching out to them. After about 2 or 3 minutes, they're signing the piece of paper and letting them go.
you know. what occurs to me, Michael, is that that in many regards that the treatment modalities that are available or indeed are allowed to be available more likely
That's that.
are in many ways, regard they're unsuitable.
Well, yeah, or there's the professionalization of what we're doing as well. Like, especially in America, everything is a qualification, everything is a certificate. So if you want to be a psychotherapist, that's well and good. But if a client comes in your door that is an alcoholic, you also have to have a CASIC, and if you're in the state of New York, which is a credentialed alcohol substance abuse counselor certification. However, the reality is that De Lawrence in 1901 was treating alcoholics. So he had no problems with treating people. Now, if you're telling me, is it safe to treat? Of course, you have to analyze what you're dealing with. I'm not telling people that you go and treat a psychopath tomorrow. No, poor Lindner had a horrible time. If you read that, he even got assaulted by one of his patients, and it took a heavy toll on his health. He was chain smoking. He treated a Nazi, as you know. He treated a communist, and he treated the victims of this, and it had a terrible effect on his health. And he died at the age of 43. All I'm trying to say is that you remember I think one of my quotes was from Eric Erickson at the end. Is that the one? You know more than you know, and we are more powerful than we know as hypnotherapists. But I don't think we're willing to fully understand our power because we live in an enormously litigious society. Don't forget.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's a really important point that you make.
Mm.
And I know we probably covered it earlier, and it's just, I suppose, a parallelism in that, and we're talking about your book, but we're also talking about hypnosis and the other aspect of hypnotherapy. And you mentioned that it is a powerful analgesic. And, for any layperson out there who has chronic pain, you know, like, for example, yourself, you've gone through hip surgery. What's your experience in using hypnosis for pain relief?
Talk to me about it exactly, because for the past 5 years I had extreme osteoarthritis. I'm proud to say that because I don't do anything in halves, and I was given a bunch of medication and I just throw it away, and I would just do my, I would call it Tai Chi, how I was practicing it. I would breathe, I'd practice my breathing, and I would do lots and lots of martial arts standing. And I felt I was going into trance. And then, of course, I would listen to lots of hypnosis. So I was kind of saying to myself, I will only take these medications when the pain is really hurting me. And my experience is that it's not that the pain is not there, but you can teach your mind to be distracted from it through trance. The pain is there for sure. I did not, I did use anesthesia when I went into the surgery, so I hope you don't think I'm a cheat. But yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I mean, but in fairness, if you read my book, you'll see that
yeah.
there are so many patients that were using mesmerism as the sole form of anesthesia. So I used anesthetics, but in truth, I after surgery, I started listening to instrumental music, closing my eyes and going deep into trance. And what I did was, even though my hip had been growling, I would be so distracted that I would go into a different world. And that distraction is so nice. So, but people who are living in chronic pain, they can fall into addiction. The OxyContin catastrophe, which was led by corporate greed and criminality, basically, that has destroyed the core of some of the heart of America because it was done by the Sackler family with greed, and it was called the war on pain, but all it was the war on and it was given to people. It was basically an opioid. If people understand the history of opium, they would have completely objected. But this opioid in a tablet was promiscuously overprescribed, But I'm saying to you right now that, first of all, you don't give opium to a person with an average condition like osteoarthritis. You give it to people with terminal cancer. Okay, so that's one thing that we make clear. But the other thing I want to say is that you can control your pain until the day you die, and you can control it naturally through using and learning how to use progressive muscular relaxation exercises, breathing techniques, and going deep into your subconscious mind and allowing that healing peace and that serenity to overwhelm you and ask for that healing energy, whether it's divine or whatever, to flow through your body and surrender to the science and surrender to that healing, because it's going to save you, you know? It's going to save you.
Interesting, indeed. You're probably familiar, Michael, with what happened during the Vietnam War, where the American soldiers they all got high on heroin. A lot of them got high on heroin, not them all, but a lot got high on heroin. And the American government realized this, and they made huge preparations back home to treat these men when they arrived back. Now, the surprising thing about it is that when they arrived back in the States, only a small percentage of them had the addiction. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I would think, well, first of all, I have uh, your man's book, Born on the 4th of July, which I haven't fully read it because it's so heartbreaking. That's not what's stopping me from reading it. I would read through it. I think what you're talking about there is that you're dealing with a severe trauma. You're a young lad. You're brought over to Vietnam, and you have um, group dynamics, right?
Mm.
So you're taking your heroin amongst a group of lads, but you're also anesthetizing yourself from the sheer hell of fighting in an unfamiliar territory like a jungle. So basically, you are self-medicating. So a lot of addiction is about self-medicating. So
Yeah.
sometimes you might have candidates who are drug addicts or alcoholics, and they may have a co-occurring or comorbid condition, and that's the genuine reason why they are addicts. But the underlying feature of all addiction is what it is. It is, of course, trauma, and trauma is the underlying theme of addiction.
Mhm. Yes,
So
indeed.
you don't treat addiction by simply detoxing. You treat addiction by de-traumatizing and by taking that out and going through it. And that's called working through. That's the psychoanalytical term for that.
Mm, interesting. Um, where do you, in your opinion, Michael, do you see hypnosis and hypnotherapy in the next 10 to 20 years?
Um, well, I think that it's safe enough because it's offer a lot of the people are offering short-term therapies, and that's the sort of society we're living in. People don't have the financial means for long-term therapy, and they can make extraordinary gains, would you believe, in a short space of time. And the question is, why? Does that mean that humanistic therapy and psychoanalysis should quit the job? It doesn't. There's another thing that we tend to forget is that when you go to a hypnotherapist, they'll listen to you and they'll take a good account of what you're about, and they'll give you a personalized audio which you can carry with you, and that can carry with you for a year, 2 or 3 years. So you're giving yourself additional therapy, right? So, and also because hypnotherapy is so profound, you can go deep within yourself. The hidden depths is an expression I learned from a great book by the history of hypnotherapy. So you go deep within yourself, and you can, oddly enough, you can say things and you can unveil things that you never would have said in maybe 600 hours of psychotherapy. And it hurts me to say that, not because I ever had 600 hours of psychotherapy, but because I love psychoanalysis. So I'm
Mm.
hurting myself by
Yeah,
admitting very, 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 very reluctantly that hypnotherapy, of course, is very, very powerful. But that doesn't
yeah.
mean that you're going to detox me from reading all my psychoanalytical books, which I
Mm.
absolutely adore and always
Oh,
will.
excellent. Now, the book where for the benefit of our listeners and people viewing, it's if we can see it there, Hypnosaga. Now, I would say, Michael, that it's a very easy read, and I think, if I may say to you, that it's you have gone back, as it were, done the research, you've you've analyzed everything, you've collated everything, and you have it's a testament to your capacity, in my opinion, to put, as it were, um, often complex terminology and express it in English, simple English that people can understand. And to that regard, I would say, urge people that if you have any interest in hypnotherapy and hypnosis, um, get this book because you will enjoy it. It's it's easy to understand because Michael has done the work for you. And in that regard, Michael, where can we get the book?
Well, you can get it on Amazon, and if you're like, so basically, if you're in the likes of the UK, go to
Yeah,
Amazon UK, and that'll cut the cost a bit. And obviously, um, leave a review, or whatever,
yeah,
or just let people know that my book exists, especially within the hypnotherapy. And I'm open to lectures. I'm open
yeah.
to more podcasts. I'm very open to doing things, albeit within the restricted time I have.
Great. Now, what, as the author of the book Hypnosaga, what would you, uh, what do you hope that readers take away from the book?
Well, I would hope that they would take away the fact that we're not a bunch of losers or just messing around with things like I, like I remember a lovely hypnotherapist, and she was interviewed by a person on radio, and he was obnoxiously arrogant, and he just wanted to portray us as a laughing stock and as sort of something that's of insignificance. In my book, I clearly document that bona fide medical doctors, bona fide psychiatrists, even dentists, surgeons such as the Irish surgeon. I read two of his books. They took
Yeah,
hypnosis and hypnotherapy deadly seriously. And we are not just meddling in the occult or in some strange spirituality, which might put people who are ever in a cult off. No, we have a bona fide and genuine history.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we have even been accepted, and it's acknowledged by medicine that hypnosis is a tool, a clinical tool.
yeah, yeah. And if there was a message that you'd want the readers to take away, uh, maybe you've said it there, but if there was anything else that you'd like the reader to take away from this book, what would it be?
Hypnosis can save your life, and it can actually and hypnotherapy, and it can actually improve the quality of your life, you know. And
Yeah,
but I would also say, because I would have my own prejudice, I would say that hypnosis is with martial arts, because I've seen what martial arts has done for me, in my recovery, and in my fighting um, osteoarthritis, that it is an alloy. But that shouldn't surprise you, because Tai Chi, when I see people doing Tai Chi, I feel that they're doing hypnosis. So I would say, I would also want to tell people the power of breath. If you don't breathe, obviously, but no, breathing, learning how to breathe That's how
Yeah.
you can take away the tension and you can take
Yeah.
away the trauma. So I would say if people could learn two things: one, that our history is a powerful history, and two, that what we're doing can save your life. All you have to do if you don't want to go to a therapist, all you have to do is simply listen to an audio, and you can go into a wonderful place of deep relaxation. And even if you had all of the troubles of the world on your shoulders, they can melt away for that hour.
Okay. Now you mentioned, Michael, that you're available to give talks.
Yeah,
You're available to do further podcasts.
absolutely.
Are you seeing clients?
No, because of my, I'm absolutely dedicated looking after a child with special needs.
Oh, okay. Right.
But
Okay.
I will do that when there comes that time. There may never
Yeah.
come that time, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. But anyway, I want to thank you so much for speaking to me today on the podcast. This is the book, Hypnosaga, unraveling the. You tell us what it is.
It's
Unraveling
called
the threads of hypnotic
Unraveling the
history.
Thread of
Yeah,
Hypnotic history. Yeah,
yeah, and that's the book, and you can get it in on Amazon, as you mentioned. I'd highly recommend it. It definitely is a, a textbook that is easily understood. Michael, as I said, has done the research. He has gone through all of the research and collated it in such a way and expressed it in writing that, you know, literally anyone can understand. And to that regard, it is a masterpiece because it's not easy to go back and do all this research and discover or read all the big terminologies. But Michael has done that for you, so highly recommended. Um, is there anything final message that you'd like to give us, Michael?
no, no. I mean, just to say that you would have been my ideal reader because in karate terms you're a sensei. You're longer doing it than me, hypnotherapy. So when you tell me it's a masterpiece, that's absolutely amazing for me to hear that.
Great.
It's
So
emotional, you know.
lovely. How can anyone out there contact you if they want to do a further podcast or
Well,
do
I
a
mean, I'm very present online. There's author Michael Mulvihill, author Michael Mulvihill at gmail.com, Mulvihill P at ymail.com. On Facebook, I'm author Michael Mulvihill. Just send me a friend request. I'm on TikTok as Dark Days Dawning. I couldn't think I couldn't
okay.
think of a more happier title. And on YouTube, there's a
Okay.
great woman who has a podcast, and it's about cults and sects, and it's Sarah Peel. She called Let's Talk About Sex. That's a fantastic title, and her work ethic inspired me. But unfortunately, I being a nerd, my YouTube channel is Dark Days Dawning. It's not a great title.
All right. Well, Michael Mulvihill, thank you so much for
Thank
joining me
you.
today.
Thank you
And
so much.
I look forward to the next time.
Yeah, well, the next time would be hopefully when I write another book, and
Yes.
hopefully it'll be as good as this one.
Yeah. Take care, Michael.
Thank you, and thank you for everything.